And welcome everybody to our weekly live stream. I'm Mike Huckabee, joining you from the Huckabee Theater in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, where we do the Huckabee Show. Senior producer of the show, Pam Case, joins me as she does every week. And Pam, hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
It was wonderful. Did a little traveling, probably too much on the road for old Pam, but a lot of good food made up for it. So yeah,
But the good thing is, when you're on the road, you can leave when you want. It's not like when everybody piles in at your house,
right?
And it's not over until they leave.
Absolutely, and no cleanup.
There's a big benefit to that.
So that was the best part.
Yeah, we were on the other hand, the receiving end of
Yes.
which we loved. We had like 30 people at our house for Thanksgiving. It was wonderful. Had a great time.
Had the smoker going, I understand.
The smoker, the deep fryer. I smoked one turkey. I deep fried another, and almost all of it was devoured.
Well, but I'm sorry you didn't bring some back.
Well, there was just enough to make some turkey gumbo and a few other things, but it was good. Well, we are happy that you are joining us, and hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Now, we want you to send your questions in the chat. Go ahead and get started, because the sooner you send them in, the more likely that we are to get to them in the course of the live stream. If you want more visibility, send a super chat. We got moderators who monitor this chat the entire time we're on, so that they can try to figure out which questions they ought to bump up to us and give us the opportunity to expand upon them. Today, we're going to talk about the protest in China, how that turmoil could affect the politics of the whole world. Also, Democrats, they chose a new House leader after Nancy Pelosi stepped down from her long-standing perch in leadership just a couple of weeks ago. But in so doing, they have fully embraced an absolute and complete election denier. You know, those people that supposedly are the enemies of democracy and the enemies of freedom. That's what Republican is told if he or she denies the results of an election as being legitimate. I'm anxious to see, will it be that way for a Democrat? We'll talk about that. And we'll also take a look at Joe Biden's economy. The GDP numbers are up, but maybe those just have to look at them in the full context, because they can be manipulated by government spending. And Biden has certainly done plenty of government spending. Now, before we jump into a whole bunch of wonderful clips that you will enjoy today, if you enjoy this live stream, please do us a favor and hit the like button. Why? Well, because the more people who hit that like button, the more people who actually see the live stream. That's just the way the algorithms work in social media. But when we say, hey, hit that like button, it's not just because we think your finger needs the exercise. It's because we think more people need to see the video. And for that to happen, hitting that like button helps us get there. We want to get to 1,500 likes before the end of the stream. You can be the next one that gets us closer to there. Helps us boost it up on YouTube. So you take your finger, see the like button on your screen, push it. And again, and again, and again. Every week we have Pam do a little pre-show poll to see what you're thinking. Pam, what's the poll question this week? So
do you know what it is?
I do not.
Okay,
no.
So we're surprising you. So apropos, after what we were talking about before, do you like turkey? Was our pre-live stream question. 85% said yes. Interestingly enough, over 14% saying no.
They don't like it.
They don't like turkey. But can I just tell you, I love David E. Miller's comment today. He says, Gov, I like turkey and gravy, but I don't like the turkey in the Oval Office or the word salad he has for a Veep. So just thought I would add that as well. So
I like that.
Yeah, that's
very
good. Thanks,
good, David Miller. Well done. You know, I think the 14% of people that don't like turkey must have never had it prepared well.
Yes.
Because unless you just hate all forms of poultry,
yes,
and you don't like chicken either, turkey done right is delicious. The one that I did in the deep fryer was Cajun seasoned, injected.
Yes.
And
I'm a little partial to that, actually.
Ooh, I like that.
I love it.
That's my favorite. That's the one I went to first. But I wanted to make a less spicy version, so I put one in the smoker, and it was more of a lemon herb rubbed flavor. But moist, delicious. A dry turkey is horrible, let's face it. And turkey is easy to dry out, and I can see. And I'm thinking maybe that 14% needs to come to my house next year. Oh boy, here we go. Now they'll all show
Or
up.
that scene from A Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase where he cuts into it and it blows up. So maybe there's something along those lines, just a tad dry.
I would never probably roast a turkey in a conventional oven because it's very difficult to do that without it being either dry or raw.
And no two ovens are the same, so that way, basic instructions 101 is not going to cut it. So
the only way, here we are talking turkey.
We are
talking turkey. But honestly, the only way to make it work is you need a very good and accurate meat thermometer.
Yes.
And never go by time, always go by the actual internal temperature of that bird. When it gets to 165 in the deepest, darkest places of the breast of the turkey, that's when the turkey is done, not by the clock.
Excellent tips right here on the live stream as we prepare for the Christmas holiday and those preparing turkey.
That's exactly right. So follow me for more recipes.
Love it.
I saw one last week. Somebody sent me one. Bacon-wrapped Oreos.
And what's wrong with that, sir?
Well,
if it's bacon wrapped, it has my attention.
It's got to be good. Oreo, good thing. Bacon, real good thing. Put them together, good thing. There you go.
That's what I say.
Maybe we'll try those on the show. Hey, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, right now is a good time to do it. Push that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because that way you will be alerted when we're going to do something like this, or maybe some of our other videos that we will be posting from time to time. We always like to bring up a favorite comment from the last live stream we had. It really wasn't last week because we were all taking Thanksgiving holidays last week, even though we did have a brand new and fresh Huckabee show for Thanksgiving weekend because we pre-taped it. So 52 weeks out of the year, fresh bread delivered on the shelf for all of our viewers.
Never a repeat. We've been doing this. We're in our 6th season, and never have we repeated a show.
Which is pretty spectacular.
Absolutely.
But the last time we did have a live stream, we had this wonderful comment from Susan Ferrazano. She says, "We have missed our president and first lady since they left and knew what was going to happen once they were gone, praying for his return."
Wow.
Interesting. And I don't think she was talking about Barack Obama either. I'm pretty sure it was the 45th president, Donald Trump, that she was speaking of. Now, here is my question for you this week. Are you optimistic about the economy due to Joe Biden's rescue plan? Please leave your answers in the chat or in the comments section below. We'll be sharing a few of those in the course of our broadcast today. I want to get right into some videos. We have a bunch of them to get to. This week has been a pretty crazy week over in China, and something remarkable has been happening, and that is a lot of the Chinese people are just fed up with the totalitarianism of their own government. Their COVID lockdowns continue. The very just harsh manner in which the Chinese government has treated its people, there's a backlash. What you're looking at right now on the screen, these are pictures from some of the revolt that's taking place in China right now. There was a fire in the city of Urumqi in China, 10 dead, 9 people injured. In one of these spots, you're going to see there was a door that was wired shut with iron wire so that people couldn't get out and be rescued. I mean, it's that kind of thing that you just can't imagine that a government would be so harsh to its people, treat them as if they simply did not matter, and wire the door shut, which is just awful. Now, these protests are continuing. Let me tell you why this is significant. This is the first time since Tiananmen Square that we've seen anything quite like this. My wife and I were in Tiananmen Square on the 25th anniversary. That would have made it 2014. And we were in Beijing, Tiananmen Square. We had a young guide, about 20-something years old, who was accompanying us around Beijing. And so when we were in Tiananmen Square, I said, "When you come back here, how does it make you feel?" And she looked at me with this quizzical look and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you know, the big event 25 years ago." Once again, she looked at me. She had no idea what I was talking about because she had never been told that there ever was a protest in Tiananmen Square.
Wow.
Never knew it happened because it has been completely scrubbed, not just from the history books, but, you know, when you're in China, You can't Google things.
Right.
It'll just show up and say you are prohibited from looking. And so just keep in mind that people in China don't have access to information like we do.
Right. Well, even parents passing down information, squelched.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, God forbid you would tell your kids this and then they somehow leak it at school.
Right.
Because then they come pay your parents a visit and haul them off.
Wow.
Never to be seen again. That's what kind of government. By the way, thank you, Apple and LeBron James and all these big companies, that just look the other way as these human rights abuses happen in China. It's absolutely awful. Joe Biden was asked, how does he feel about it? Does he have a message for the protesters who are protesting for their freedom? Boy, does he ever give a powerful answer. Let's watch.
Thank you, folks.
All right. So you have a message to the protesters in China you put better on.
And there he goes. Joe is leaving the building without so much as responding in any way. I guess he doesn't want to offend President Xi. After all, we learned from Hunter Biden's laptop, Joe made a lot of money off the deals that Hunter made with the Communist Chinese parties. He don't want to break that little sweet deal up. Let's hope it gets discovered enough that somebody will make some accountability happen in that whole process. Well, we mentioned at the top of the show that the Democrats have elected an election denier, because that seems to be the number one sin in all the world, to deny the results of an election. And after all, that's what Donald Trump did in 2020. He denied the results of the election. And that made him an enemy of the people and a threat to democracy. And all those people that marched on January 6, 2021, all enemies of democracy because they denied the election. Well, the Democrats have elected themselves a new leader for the House to replace Nancy Pelosi. And don't look now, but he is an election denier. Watch.
Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful.
That was Hakeem Jeffries saying basically Donald Trump's an illegitimate president. This was in 2019 when he made that comment. It wasn't a one-off. This is something he has repeatedly said. Here's yet another moment of the election denying Hakeem Jeffries.
It seems to me that there's a cloud of illegitimacy that continues to hang over 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and that patriotic Americans have a responsibility to try to figure out what the heck happened in terms of the malignant tumor that seemed to have been embedded in that 2016 campaign.
I'm just trying to figure out, how is it that if you're a Democrat and you question the election of Donald Trump, you're a patriot, and you not only have a right, you have a responsibility to find out the source of that tumor. Because after all, there's no way Donald Trump would have actually been elected. But if Donald Trump or any of his supporters question the 2020 election, and the reasons for that are the ballot harvesting, the fact that Donald Trump got more votes than any incumbent president in the history of the country and still lost, and it took days to come up with enough ballots for Joe Biden. He never left his basement, except occasionally like a gopher sticking his head up to speak to 12 people in a parking lot. And somehow, if we question the legitimacy of that, we're enemies of democracy.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat and you do it, you're a patriot.
I think we've lost our copy of the left's rule book somewhere. What do we do with that, Gov? Where is it?
I don't know. I mean, it really is perplexing to me.
Yes, it is.
But you know what's even worse than the politicians saying this stuff? We kind of expect that. We don't have a press responsible enough to call out the absolute hypocrisy of this, that they just have no sense of self-awareness to even understand their own duplicity in going along with it and never raising a question to Hakeem Jeffries and saying, how can you say this?
Or just so intellectual, and they have just made this decision on their own strategically to not talk about it and raise their hands. I don't think so.
Didn't really happen that way.
I don't think so.
Well, we're going to have an interesting guest on our show this weekend. Matt Gaetz, congressman from the 1st District of Florida, will be with us. And Matt's taken some very interesting positions that I will ask him about on the show this weekend. You don't want to miss it. I like Matt a lot. I told Pam before the show, I hosted several fundraising events for him in my home in Florida when we lived there before we moved back to Arkansas permanently and completely in 2020. And he's a very bright young lawyer and just brilliant. But he said he's not going to support Kevin McCarthy in the House speakership, which is interesting because there aren't enough votes to keep Kevin from doing it. But there are certain things that I really like about Matt Gaetz. He is unapologetically and unafraid to take on pretty much anything. And one of the things that he is pushing for that I absolutely applaud is making it so that members of Congress can't get involved in stock trades. Let's watch.
I will also introduce an amendment to have a ban on members of Congress trading individual stocks. How can we say that that is not something that dilutes our trust in markets and in governance when people are essentially able to bet on the outcomes that they have an ability to somewhat control? And I expect Democrats to vote for that. And finally, I would observe something that has really worked well in the state of Florida, a single subject rule. A bill coming to the floor should only deal with one subject. I was incensed as a freshman when I had to vote on the Farm Bill and whether or not to authorize war in Yemen in the same vote.
Brilliant. I mean, here. On those things, there is no disagreement. Members of Congress shouldn't be able to trade stocks while they're in office because they have inside information. Martha Stewart went to prison for less than what some of these members of Congress do. And he's totally right about the single subject rule that ought to be implemented in Congress, because a lot of times in a campaign you'll hear, Pam Case voted against veterans. Oh, what does she hate veterans? No, but it turns out that there was a tiny little piece of a bill about veterans, but the big piece of the bill was about a bloated spending program, had nothing to do with veterans, and that's the game that's played. If you had the single subject rule, every bill would have to be related to one thing and not just a whole grab bag of all this stuff. It would be great.
Yes, absolutely.
I bet you got some questions rolling in by now.
I do. And starting with the super chat from Billy Jones, asking today, Governor, what is your opinion of the 13 Republicans who voted to change the definition of marriage this week in the Senate?
I think they're wusses and wimps, and I wish they would just disappear. Because what they basically did was strike a blow against religious liberty and the integrity of churches, Christian colleges and schools, and individual Christian business people to be able to practice their faith without having the government call them bigots and try to shut them down and even prosecute them because they don't go along with something that violates their biblical understanding of what marriage is. What people do in their world is their business. But when you impose that upon people of faith and say, well, you have to accept it, you have to allow that biological boys get to go into the locker room with biological girls at a Christian college or at a Christian summer camp, now you've moved from getting to do what you want to do to forcing that upon people who don't agree with it and don't think it's right. So I'm really disgusted with those Republicans who did that, and I think that we ought to keep their names before us. Hopefully they retire, but if they run again, boot them out.
William Spangler has a comment today, Governor. Congratulations to the governor-elect, of course, to your daughter, Sarah. And I pray that the country survives these trials. Thanks for your thoughtful, uplifting content, and God bless your days.
Oh, very nice. Thank you, William Spangler, for the kind words. And we don't always get them. Sometimes we get some rather heated things thrown. So when we get something kind and nice like that, the best thing I can do is say thank you.
And we have some more. We will share that a little bit later on. Zelda Me is saying in her question today, does the president have the right to shut down Twitter? Doesn't that go against our First Amendment rights? Does that border on communism?
Oh, it doesn't border on it. It goes right to the heart of it. Government has no right to censor Twitter or to shut down Facebook or anything else. Now, what the government has a right to do is to say, okay, if you're going to be selective, say this to Twitter and to Facebook, And if you guys are going to say, well, Pam Case can say what she wants to say, but Mike Huckabee can't, okay, then you're no longer protected under Rule 232 at the Federal Communications Commission, which basically says that these platforms can't be sued and they're not accountable. Well, they should be if they're making decisions about which content is acceptable and which isn't. Let me give you the analogy for this so you understand. The telephone company, great example. The telephone company provides telephone lines. You talk into one end, somebody else talks in the other end. Telephone company does not monitor what you say, and if they did and they didn't like what you said, they can't say, I'm sorry, we're going to cut your phone service off because you were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and all of us in the telephone office are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and we refuse to let Cowboys fans talk on our instruments. What would happen? They get sued,
Right.
Rightfully so. So what's happened, social media is still a new phenomenon. We're still trying to figure out how this all works. But the social media companies have basically been exempted from being held accountable for their deciding Cowboys fans, they don't get to say anything. Steelers fans do. That's what has to change. But as to whether Joe Biden or the government can come in and tell these social media companies that they cannot function at all, well, that is absolute, just totalitarian, call it fascism, Marxism, communism, but it's an ism that is not freedom, that's for sure.
We have some Canadian dollars coming in our super chat this afternoon, Governor, from Joe Pepito, and he is simply asking this question: when is Hunter going to jail?
Well, Joe, that's a great question, and I appreciate that it's coming from those of you in Canada. Maybe you're getting better information about this whole story than a lot of Americans who have been shielded from it because the social media giants and the mainstream media legacy companies like the New York Times, the Washington Post, have covered this story up. Recently, the New York Times acknowledged that the laptop was legit, that it really was Hunter's laptop. Now, once you're there and you agree to that, you're going to have to at some point know what's on that laptop. And as that comes out, how are you going to deny that Joe Biden was the big guy, that he was getting at least a 10% cut of these deals that Hunter was doing? My perspective is this. Look, Hunter was a drug addict. I don't know if he still is, hopefully not. Sleazy guy, sleazy business, sleazy personal life, just horrible. But the real issue isn't Hunter. The issue is that Joe Biden said he had no knowledge of any of Hunter's business, when in fact the record shows something quite different. Not only did he know, but he actively participated and personally and lucratively benefited from it. So the question is not Hunter. The question is the elected Joe Biden, who is vice president and then is president. What did he know? When did he know it? And how much money did he make because his son was doing business deals with the Communist Chinese Party? How compromised is the president under those circumstances? That is very, very legitimate. Speaking of Joe, let's look at some clips. This is Joe Biden talking about the American Rescue Plan. Now, I don't know if you will notice this at the end of the clip, but Joe had to be rushed to Walter Reed Medical Center right after this happened, and I'll explain what happened right after we watch.
We passed the American Rescue Plan. Now, everybody knows it, but we did so much, no one knows the effects of it yet. They're just coming into play.
Yeah, did you notice what happened? You see, the reason he had to be whisked away to Walter Reed, he broke his arm patting himself on the back. You may have missed that, but he said we did so much that nobody knows the effects of it yet. That's got to be one of the most arrogant things I've ever heard any president say. We're so good at this. We've done such a great job. The economy is so great because of what we did. I guess maybe I'm missing some of this because I talk to people every day for whom the economy is not going that swimmingly well. Joe Biden is also saying that people ought to feel a great sense of optimism for his actions.
And what's most exciting about it, people are starting to feel a sense of optimism and the impact of these legislative achievements in their own lives.
Yep, I'm sure that's what we're all hearing, isn't it? Standing at the gas pump or at the grocery store, paying your utility bills. People are just so optimistic, and they say, boy, I sure am glad Joe Biden has made these decisions he's made on energy.
It's a little bit
Is
different.
that what you're getting today?
A little bit different friend circle, I think, based on what we're seeing today, for sure. All right, so we do have another question. Do you call Biden and his cabinet members idiots when watching the news? This is from Alaskan Sourdough.
I love the handle, Alaskan Sourdough. Actually sounds pretty good. Do I call them idiots? I call them lots of things, but not always stuff I would repeat on anything that could be captured and preserved forever on the internet. It is frustrating. I mean, it's like this guy that was caught. He's the nuclear waste specialist, and he has a shaved head, and he wears dresses, and he says he's non-binary, and he got arrested for stealing a suitcase filled with women's clothes at the Minneapolis airport. Now, his first explanation was that, well, he didn't realize that wasn't his bag. That is a lie, because here's what happened. When he took the flight, he didn't check a bag. So you can't claim a bag on the carousel. And by the way, the video of him picking up that bag shows him looking around, tearing the luggage tag off, and rushing away with a bag full of women's clothing in a suitcase that was not his. No. Now, here's what's interesting. The White House will not tell us if he's still being paid by you and me, the taxpayers. This happened in October. We're just now learning enough about it.
Wow.
Speaking of learning some stuff, if you haven't learned to subscribe to the channel, you better do it, and better do it now, because I said so. Hit the notification bell and be sure to enter into the chat with us. We want to make sure that you are a regular part of our live streams. By the way, we're wanting to hit 1,500 likes before the end of the live stream. So push that like button. Do that right now if you can. Because it goes so well into this, I want to play this clip. This is CNBC, which is not a friend to the conservative voters and typically a friend to Biden, but they're playing it straight this time on the oil strategy and energy strategy of the Biden White House. Listen as they question the White House spokesperson about drilling for U.S. energy. Watch.
He says we're going to end drilling domestically. That causes the major oil producers to not want to invest long term. How long will we need these major oil producers to keep drilling? What does he mean we're going to end drilling? When?
Well, eventually we're going to be phasing out the use of oil.
Eventually? What's eventually? Because you're not going to want to invest any money in doing this if it's 2 or 3 years from now, or even 5 years almost.
See, that is really the important question. People say, well, why don't these oil companies just go drill? Well, are you going to spend billions of dollars in exploration and then find out that the government's going to shut you down right in the middle of your investment? No. I mean, it's like saying, I want to invest in McDonald's stock, knowing that next year they're going to close all their franchise and quit selling hamburgers. Nobody would do that. Right. And nobody's going to invest in energy companies if the government is about to shut them down. It's a simple thing. They can't answer it. They don't want to answer it. Well, let's see if we can answer some of our viewers' questions.
All right, let's dig into another one here. All right, so, a question about why Donald Trump had dinner with former Kanye, or with Kanye West. Mm-hmm. Did you see that? Sue Prav is asking about that.
Yes, I did. And more troublesome is the fact that one of the guests at that dinner was Nick Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes, yes.
Who is a white supremacist and neo-Nazi. I mean, Trump has said he didn't know who Nick was, that Kanye brought him and it wasn't part of the deal. That could be, I don't know, but here's what I know. President Trump needs to strongly, and I don't mean gently, strongly disassociate himself with Nick Fuentes. And quite frankly, you know, I've said many positive things about Kanye in the past, kind of found him engaging and entertaining. But in the last couple of months, he has gone full-bore anti-Semitic, has been very hateful toward Israel and all Jewish people. And at that, I just have to say, hey, we're done. You know, that is the worst kind of bigotry. It's unacceptable. And the president needs to come out and vehemently denounce the views that espouse anti-Semitism and pro-Nazism. Later, just this week, on Alex Jones' show, and Alex is certainly lacking in credibility for most of us, and when he's the most sane, rational person on a particular show, you know it must have gone off the rails. Kanye was going so far as to saying that the Nazis did a lot of good things. And I'm thinking, I can't think of a one. I just can't. They were murderous, evil people who murdered 11 million non-combatants, men, women, children, elderly people, and sick people. And no, there's nothing about that that's good. So, Kanye, man, you need to repent, because there's nothing about the Nazis you need to praise. Nick Fuentes, you need to disappear, because I think your views are disgusting. You're free to have them. This is America. You can even espouse them. But President Trump, disassociate yourself with these people because it's hurting you. Interestingly, David Friedman, one of Trump's closest friends, was his attorney for years and years in New York. David Friedman made a very bold comment and basically said to his dear friend of decades, Donald Trump, you have to disassociate yourself and condemn this kind of talk from these people. So couldn't get any clearer than that.
Yeah. Teresa Gardner is asking today, Governor, how do we, the people, go about changing back to paper ballots and one-day voting?
I don't think we'll ever go back to one-day voting. I think we're too far beyond that, and people wouldn't accept it. And there's nothing wrong with early voting as long as you're the one doing the voting, and this isn't ballot harvesting. So the real problem is having an election season that lasts for weeks and weeks, not because people need to early vote because they're going to be away. You know, if it's a 2 or 3 week thing, that's maybe legitimate. But 5, 6 weeks of early voting, issues come out that you didn't know, I think that's a problem. But the bigger problem is what's called ballot harvesting, where people are sent ballots and someone goes around and picks them up. You don't validate the vote by a photo ID, and you just have people indiscriminately going around picking up ballots. So here's what Republicans have been arguing. Let's just go back to all paper ballots, single day voting. Isn't going to happen. Republicans need to play the game better than the Democrats do. I'm not saying that we lie, we cheat, we steal. I say that we play the game. We play it for keeps, and we play it to win. It's been said, and I think it's very true, Republicans do a great job of running campaigns. Democrats do a great job of running elections. And elections ultimately matter more than the campaigns. Maybe a lesson we could learn.
Something I wanted to bring up, first of all, we've got a super chat from Cliff Griffin, just a simple chat to say hello, a super chat to say hello. So thank you for Cliff for watching today. And Sue Prov, who asked us the question a little earlier, I wanted to share her comment, Gov, totally off the political realm. She says, whoever designed your Christmas set did a beautiful job.
Sue, I appreciate hearing that.
Yes.
I didn't design it, so I can't take any credit whatsoever. But I join you in my admiration for a wonderful staff and crew.
Yeah, Bonnie Hartle leads that, and she has a wonderful crew that helps her every year.
Yeah.
But they have, and Brad with the lighting, and they have done an amazing job this year.
It's beyond anything we've had before in our 5 full seasons that we've had the show, and it's always been beautiful. But it is a knockout. And by the way, if it looks good on TV, I wish you could come and see it in person. Maybe you can still get to Nashville before Christmas and get tickets for the show and be in the studio audience. It is dazzling.
Absolutely. Time for another one. Ann A. is saying today, Gov, and we touched on this a little earlier in our live stream. Why is it this way that bills have to be a combination of so many things? We talked about that.
Yeah.
When did it get like this, and did it start out like that?
No, it did not start out like that, and it got this way because people figured that there was a really sleazy, greasy way to get stuff done under the table and underhandedly so that people would feel compelled to vote for terrible bills. Because if they didn't, they get labeled for having voted against good things in the bill. And the only way to fix it is to change the law and the rules. That's what Matt Gaetz is talking about. So it's one of the topics we will discuss with him this weekend on the Huckabee Show, which, by the way, I hope you'll be watching this weekend. And even though we're about out of time, we want to remind you, you can still leave questions in the comment section. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because YouTube, well, they just don't do us any favors in showing our content to people that don't hit that like button. So the best way you can get all your content is with the subscription button, hit the notification bell, and by checking on the channel.